All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for this community briefing on the improvements to the oak alley at Poplar Gate at the Arboretum. My name is Keisha Ofeish, and I'm the project manager with Boston Parks and Rec. Before we dive into the presentation, I just want to quickly go over a few things about how tonight will go and what to expect. Next. There we go. Thanks. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and it'll be available on the project webpage within the next week. So feel free to share the link with any neighbors who may be interested but couldn't make it tonight. I'll put the link in the chat for you right now. There you go. So during the presentation, please keep your microphone muted just to avoid distractions. And during the discussion session, we'll encourage you to turn on your video if you feel comfortable doing so. Next. We want this to be a positive experience for everyone to feel comfortable speaking up, so let's just be respectful of the time. Tonight's session is 90 minutes. Please keep comments and questions focused on the project. Next. Zoom tips during the presentation. Feel free to use the nonverbal prompts or the chat. You can participate in the discussion session at the end via questions in the chat. We'll respond to them in order, or you can also raise your hand by clicking on the icon with 3 dots at the bottom of the screen, and Michael will unmute you to speak. Next. Okay, so tonight we'll start by introducing the project team, giving a brief overview of the project goals and scope, and then we'll have a listening and discussion session and close out with next steps. Next. All right, just letting in a few more. So project team, as I mentioned, my name is Keisha Ofeish. I'm the project manager from the Parks Department. Also joining us tonight from Parks is our outreach coordinator, Michael McMillan. He's our moderator for tonight. Kathy Baker Eclipse just joined the call, and she is the director of the capital plan at Parks. Caroline Peters is our JP liaison for Office of Neighborhood Services. And then here tonight from the Arboretum are Danny Schisler, Head of Operations and Project Management, Z Porter, Associate Project Management, Rodney Eason. Rodney may not have joined, but Rodney is also involved. He's the Director of Horticulture and Landscape. And then from Kyle Zick's office, Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture is our design team, and we have Kyle and Jay here. I believe there may be some elected officials or staff members on the call. Please feel free to go ahead and introduce yourselves, share a few words if you would like.
Hi, my name is Ann. I work with State Senator Mike Rush. I'm looking forward to tonight's meeting. Thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Right. Anyone else?
Hi, it's great to see you, Kevin. You helped me out a lot in some recent cases. Melissa Beltran, Director of Constituent Services for Councilor Ben Weber. Thank you for having me this evening.
Thanks for coming, Melissa. All right, great. All right, next. So at Parks, we're often asked how design decisions are made. And so as a reminder, park design is guided by a few key factors. There's the safety and regulatory guidelines like ADA, the goals of Parks and Rec, the City of Boston's priorities, and then community input. Next. The city has key priorities that we aim to address in every parks project, including delivering exceptional constituent services, promoting green spaces, creating family-friendly areas, closing the racial wealth gap, and building a healthy, safe city. Next. The Parks Department also has goals such as creating accessible, diverse, and balanced spaces, fostering meaningful community engagement, ensuring spaces are adaptive and resilient, and promoting connections. Next. So for this particular project, there's an additional factor guiding the design, which is the longstanding public-private partnership between the City of Boston and the Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University. Most of the Arboretum's 281 acres are actually owned by the city, which leases the land to Harvard for just $1 per year. Under this agreement, Harvard is responsible for managing the plant collections and the overall landscape, while the city takes care of maintaining the site's infrastructure, including the roads and utilities. Next. So I'd like to acknowledge the entrance improvements project currently happening at the Arboretum that Danny and his team are leading. The Arboretum, together with MVVA Landscape Architecture, is working to revitalize 5 key entrances. The goal is to make these gateways more welcoming, more accessible, and more reflective of the Arboretum and its history. The entrances included are the Arborway Gate, Beach Path Gate, Walter Street Gate, Washington Street Gate, and then Poplar Gate. The new Poplar Gate is made possible through a very generous gift from Roanne Costin, and the goals of that project are to improve accessibility and safety, enhance and expand plantings, renew and restore historic walls and gate, protect and enhance the view sheds into and out of the Arboretum, and improve wayfinding and add interpretive signage. So Poplar Gate, as you know, broke ground last August, and they do plan to reopen later this month. Our project, which we're undertaking right now and going to talk about tonight, is the Oak Alley, which is a renovation of the path that connects the Poplar Gate with Peters Hill Ring Road. So we're really building off of the work that the Arboretum has started. Danny, feel free to add if there's anything else you'd like to say about the entrance improvements project.
Sure. Well, thank you, Keisha. I'll just emphasize the point that you brought up, that the Arboretum is a unique public-private partnership that has been around for 153 years now. And I think these 2 projects, the Oak LA renovation and the entrance improvement project, are a wonderful example of how a public-private partnership like the Arboretum can really enhance a jewel in the city of Boston. So we're extremely grateful for the city's contributions here and the work of the design team on the Oak LA renovation. I'll also just mention that the way that we decided on which entrances to prioritize for the entrance improvement project, part of that prioritization had to do with the Rosendale Gateway Path. So the stretch of LA that we'll be talking about today is also part of the Rosendale Gateway Path project. For those of you who are aware of that, or who have even contributed to that project, this will be a great renovation of a stretch of that 1.5 mile shared use path that will connect Rosendale Village with hopefully Forest Hills eventually. So thanks, Keisha.
Great, thank you so much. All right, then let's go into the Oak Alley. Next slide. All right, so our scope of work for this renovation that we're doing is to repave the path, restore the cobble swales that are there, but they're under the asphalt, protect the existing trees, and improve stormwater drainage. Next. So here's a quick look at where we are in the project schedule. We're in the schematic design phase, and this community briefing is coming before we really dive into our construction document drawings. During that phase, we'll also submit drawings to BWSC. We're aiming to go out to bid this fall and start construction in the spring, and we're estimating a construction cost of somewhere between $550,000 and $850,000, depending on a couple of factors that KZLA will discuss shortly. With that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Kyle to present the design project.
Thanks, Keisha. So I'm sure all of you know where this is, but we'll start with a little bit of orientation. You know, this air photo that I'm showing is the entire Arboretum, bounded by Center Street, the Arborway, South Street, and we have Flora Way here. And what's highlighted in yellow is the Oak Alley, which is just off of Peters Hill Road. The Oak Alley, it's about 750 feet long, picking up from the Poplar Gate project that Danny and Keisha mentioned, and then comes up to the Peter Hills Road intersection. And it's called the Oak Alley because it is lined with oaks on each side of the path. And we have good documentation of what this looked like originally, which is guided the Poplar Gate project, but also we're going to take cues from that as well. So here's a picture in 2023 of the Poplar Gate prior to the work that's been done. So this pavement's been redone, the cobblestone swales restored, the walls rebuilt, the gate refurbished, and then we're picking up from there. And here's an image from 1905 of that same space. So quite a bit different. The trees hadn't grown up. You can see a large, shrub understory. And as part of the investigation and the design work for this gate, they knew you could see cracking in the pavement and the historic photos indicated there was a cobblestone swale here. So they did some test pits to confirm it was there and what it looked like so that in the design drawings, they could replicate it or reset what was there. So then as we launch into our part of the project, just uphill of the Poplar Gate, it's pretty simple and straightforward. We have just under 30 feet wide, I think 28 feet wide asphalt path that needs to be repaved. And we do have some options on how we do that. But we would like to expose the cobblestone swales that are on each side. And we see that same cracking in the asphalt to know that it's there. And we want to improve and repave the asphalt, have the cobblestone swales, and of course, protect the trees. These views are looking back down toward Poplar Gate or looking up the hill. Very different seasons, obviously, but still the same space. And I mentioned trees, and of course, with the Arboretum, we're going to have even more awareness on protection of trees than a typical project, although it's an important thing for any Boston Parks project. But you can see that the trees are very close to the pavement in what is the cobblestone swale here. So we're taking that so far as that we're going to do a test pit fairly soon and peel up the asphalt from next to one tree to better understand how deep the tree roots are below the existing pavement so that we can have a very prescriptive repaving specification so that a contractor doesn't come in here and dig right up against these trees, or even here if we find that there's tree roots, to do this in a sensitive way. And that information will help guide us what kind of pavement to propose. In addition to the path repaving, there are some amenities to be added. One will reset the existing sign, trash receptacle, and drinking fountain, but we'll add a bench and add bike racks in this area. And kind of back to the idea of tree protection, we will encircle each one of these trees, or maybe collectively protect them with either a chain link fence or a movable fence like this that has a weighted base to protect and prevent contractors from getting near the trunk, but also more importantly, the critical root zone. So then let's talk more about the project specifically. This key plan changed orientation from the drawings I've shown you, but on the key plan, that's the Poplar Gate. Peters Hill Road is here, and then we split it into two pieces. Poplar Gate here, Peters Hill Road here, and these connect at this point, just so that we can have these a little bit larger. But at first, one thing we think about is the existing path, does it meet accessibility regulations with ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, or the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board? What they would tell us for if this were a brand new path is that the slope running up the hill would have to be less than 5%. So 1 foot of rise, 20 feet of horizontal distance. What we've highlighted here in this orange crosshatch are areas where we're steeper than 5%. And we knew that early on as we stepped foot on the site, but acknowledging that we are not going to regrade this path to be less than 5% because of the impact it would have on the trees. So Boston Parks and the design team met with the City of Boston Disabilities Commission to talk about this and say, all right, what are our options? We want to do the right things, but we have a lot of constraints here because we want to protect the trees. And generally, the thought was to make people aware at the bottom and the top of the hill was signage to explain that the path is over 5% and have a resting point somewhere at the midpoint of the climb up the hill. And then we will submit a variance to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board explaining all the constraints we have here and what we will do for accommodation. The other thing to note on this plan, these dashed green circles, those are the drip line or that critical root zone of each one of these trees. And you can see that they overlap and they go over the top of this pathway. And that's also why we're going to do that. We're going to peel up a 15 by 15 foot area next to one of these trees and see where the tree roots are. We know they're definitely out here in the lawn, and you can see some cracking in the pavement to indicate that the tree roots are under here, but typically they wouldn't want to be in the gravel base of that asphalt. But we suspect with a deep-rooted species like oak that they will probably be under or in that gravel subbase. So with that information, we'll do everything we can to protect those roots. And what does that mean going forward? So same orientation, same graphic. Here's the key plan with Poplar Gate on this side, Peters Hill Road on this side, and then we're enlarged and split up into two pieces. So what you're seeing, there's two shades of gray here. The lighter gray is asphalt paving. And we're saying specifically that could be asphalt or pervious asphalt. And there is a difference. Asphalt is what you see typically on that path today and in any of the city roads. We're considering pervious asphalt because it would allow water to drain through the pavement into the ground instead of just having it drain downhill. And that water would then be available to the trees, but also it's helping larger scale goals in terms of mitigating flooding in the urban setting. And this goes back to our test pit, because if we find that there are a lot of tree roots that are fairly shallow under this pavement, we will probably not do the pervious asphalt system, because that system requires almost a 2-foot excavation and backfilling with a gravel area for storage of that stormwater. Otherwise, if we find that the tree roots are shallow, then we will basically peel off the existing asphalt and put back a new layer of asphalt on top of the existing gravel subbase. The difference, but it would be common to each one of those options, is that we expose the cobble gutter, because the tree roots are not impacted by that at all, because that gutter already exists. We'll have to reset some stones, I'm sure, because they're going to be heaved or some may be missing. And then the other things I've already hinted at, we'll add an accessibility sign at the bottom of the hill and the top of the hill, so people understand that it's a steeper path that exceeds 5%. And I mentioned there would be a resting place. We would add a bench and a pad next to it for a companion wheelchair about the midpoint of that hill. And then up at Peters Hill Road, there's already a collection of trash receptacle, drinking fountain, and signage. We will add a bike rack and add another bench in that location. One of the questions in the chat is, will the swales line the whole LA? Yes, and as far as we know, it does line both sides of the path all the way up to where we're indicating here. It may continue, but that's where we'll have it in our project. We won't remove any if we encounter any, because later phases, if there are some, could uncover those. So just to go a little bit further, if you've been out in Franklin Park, Circuit Drive, there's a very similar path construction out there. Same designer, Frederick Olmsted. These are more regular rectangular shaped cobblestone swales on both sides, similar with the path. And there we did a typical asphalt repaving. So it's a very similar circumstance, just a little different cobble construction. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be thinking about what kind of asphalt to use, either a typical asphalt that would be a couple layers of asphalt on top of the existing base, or that pervious asphalt, which would require us to remove the existing base and replace it. Then some of the site furnishings that I've mentioned as we looked at the plans, there'll be a new bike rack added up at Peters Hill Road. We've reset the existing trash bin, add 2 benches, have the steep path ahead sign that's a coordinated graphic design with the Arboretum sign system, and reset that existing drinking fountain. Oh, and the other thing I should mention, there's a number of catch basins within the project area. We've already cleaned those as part of the design and had a TV camera investigate the drain lines, so that as we make this investment on the surface, we want to make sure all the underground infrastructure is solid and good for the next 20, 50 years. So that's an overview of a fairly straightforward project. I know there's been some questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions you have on the scope of the project or the things we're proposing.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Yes, if you would like to go ahead and talk about people with a walker or a wheelchair or other device accessing the bench from the path over the swale.
Yep, that's a good point. So we've had that same circumstance out of Franklin Park, and acknowledging that cobblestone or the rounded cobblestone that we will have would not be an accessible surface to cross to get to the bench. So what we did at Franklin Park is we flattened out this swale to make the slopes compliant, but that was different because this block was regular enough that we could do that. So more than likely we will either pave over, or we could take these cobbles and cut them to have a flat surface and reset them. But we will make an accessible route that's compliant from the asphalt path to the bench pad. Are you muted, Keisha?
Oops. Sorry. Thanks. If anyone else would like to ask questions, you can raise your hand by clicking on the, let's see, the icon with the 3 dots. If you would like to be recognized, and then we can help you unmute yourself. And Deborah?
Hi, yeah, thanks for the response on the swales. This may be a little bit outside the scope of this project, but across the street from the entrance, there's a wall that is partially falling down that leads up to another path. I don't know the name of it. I walk it frequently. And so I was just curious if the Arboretum has on its list any repair to that wall. I know it's separate from this project, but it's somewhat related to it because when this project ends, it's going to be so beautiful. And I'm so excited about what I see when I walk by there every day right now. But then when you look across the street and it's like the wall is like kind of dilapidated and it's used a lot. So anyway, just curious if that's on a list somewhere and if you can, someone can speak to that. Thanks.
Keisha, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Deborah. That section of wall is on a list of wall repair requests that we've been working on with the Parks Department. So we're working our way around. As you know, we have many perimeter walls and the forces of entropy are always working against them. So I hope that soon we'll be able to tackle that section.
Raby, you're next. Excuse me if I pronounced your name wrong.
Oh, Rabbi Shoshana?
Oh, that's funny. Hello, I'm Shoshana. Rabbi's just my title. And I was just wondering how this will impact access to the space during construction. As a neighbor who walks this path multiple times a week, or the adjacent areas, like will we be able to be in the meadow area kind of underneath, but in the little bowl that's close to the path that we're talking about? Yeah, how does it impact access and how long will the project last? Thank you.
That's a great question. So the path would be closed off during construction. And it wouldn't, the kind of the fencing would not go too far beyond the edges of the alley, essentially. So you would be able to access the kind of adjacent landscapes, but I don't believe you would be able to like walk in through the gate and up the hill to Peters Hill Road, to the ring road.
Right, but the adjacent landscapes, and then I assume it would impact access to the current water fountain that is by that map.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good to know.
Yes.
Thank you.
And per our schedule, we're looking at starting construction this spring, and it shouldn't take more than a couple of seasons, really.
Okay.
I mean, I'm really hedging it, but
Yeah.
maybe Kyle, you can speak more about it.
Well, I think it really depends if we do typical asphalt or pervious asphalt. if we were to do pervious asphalt, it's more involved because we have to excavate and then bring in new gravel and then pave. And there's a lot of benefits to doing that. But if we do typical asphalt, we peel the asphalt, redo the cobble swales and repave. So it's a much faster project. I think it really should just be a few months because it's just not a difficult project. The paving itself is just a few days, so it's just all the prep work that we need leading up to that.
Great. Thank you. William? Let's see. William, are you able to unmute yourself?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yes. I'm not William, I'm his wife. And
Sure.
I have mobility issues. I don't have a handicap plate, but I have difficulty accessing, I have mobility difficulties. And I'm glad you're taking those into account when you kind of look at this, but with the closure of some of the parking areas next to these gates, how am I supposed to get to these paths? Because my family tried to drive me to actually, it was the South Street gate when there was some flowers blooming, but it was like terrifying to get out of the car while we were parked in the street and cars are going by because there was no place to park for a person who has mobility issues. So the closing off of some of the parking by these gates has made it either dangerous or impossible for me to access some of these areas. So I'm glad you're taking account of the accessibility during the paths, even though there may be some constraints on it. But how do we get to the paths? I can't even get to them. Thank you very much.
And then Keisha, we have a comment from an individual named Jan. She said, it's been exciting to see the progress so far. I'm a local resident without a car. I do love biking through the winded main Arboretum paths, but having more direct path to and from Forest Hills would be a major plus. When I've got CSA veggies to haul, in parentheses, up the hill back, can be a lot with extra weight.
Thank you.
Keisha, would you mind if I just respond to some of the comments regarding the parking at the gates?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely. I just want to let everyone know that as we remove parking from the gates, which of course was not a historical feature of the entrances, they were made to welcome people in, not to allow them to park at them, and became parking lots over the years and paved over. As we remove that parking, we're also working to continuously advocate to the city to add true accessible parking along major parking corridors, including Flora Way. In fact, we're advocating an entire reconstruction of Flora Way, which is in really rough shape. The sidewalks are crumbling. There's no parking marked out, especially not ADA parking. I did get confirmation from the Boston Transportation Department last year that they would put in an engineering request for some short-term ADA parking at what used to be Bussey Gate. So I would point you towards that as the next best semi-accessible entrance. You can also call into our visitor center and get driving permits if you have accessibility needs that allow you to actually drive through the Arboretum and see the spaces. But we're very aware of the challenges as we remove parking. And I'll just note in particular with South Street Gate, that was actually closed off to vehicles because it had become an area for late night car gatherings and parties that were absolutely horrible for the neighbors living in the area, just late night music blasting. And we worked with the city the Parks Department to add stones to that entrance to exclude cars, which has pretty much solved the problem of the late night gatherings at that entrance and helped the neighborhood not have to deal with that issue, as well as our staff having to clean up all the destruction, the graffiti, beer cans and glass everywhere. So that was a little bit different of a situation, but I do understand your concerns and thank you for expressing them.
And just to add on to that, the construction for the Oak-a-Lay project will not take out any of the parking along Flora Way. All right, thank you, Danny, for
Bruno?
Ben Bruno.
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Phil, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much. This looks really exciting. I just have a couple quick questions, or one question to start. Can you tell me a little bit more about, I've heard about pervious pavement. I'm just curious about like the texture and whether, you know, what is able to, like, how is the texture different from standard asphalt in terms of things that can roll on it?
Yep. Yeah, the pervious asphalt is a little more coarse, but not that much. So if you're thinking of strollers, wheelchairs, skateboards, or bikes, it's going to feel a little different, but it's not going to prevent any of those uses.
Great. And then the last thing I just want to say, yeah, I just to echo, I really appreciate as a neighbor close by on Colgate Road, I can, it's been a big difference having that gate where the car parties used to happen, having that close to that, big difference. It's just also a lot safer and more peaceful to cross on South Street. And Jen, just to echo some things about accessibility, like I appreciate the considerations when it comes to going up the hill there on the Oak-a-Lay, and things like the bike racks and whatnot. But I just want to emphasize to electeds and city folk on the call that, you know, our neighborhood still doesn't have, as great as these improvements are, and they're fantastic. Our neighborhood still doesn't have access to accessible access to the Poplar Gate because of the lack of sidewalks on South Street. We just have the granite step up. So, you know, these projects are super exciting. I would love to see a project that gave us true accessibility to them in our neighborhood eventually too. So, yeah, just excited to see this all happen. Thank you all very much.
Ben, if I could just respond, for any of you who have not seen phase 3 of the Rosendale Gateway Path project, please check that out in the links. That phase is all about creating connectivity from South Street, the lower South Street neighborhood up to Poplar Gate. So very important. There's been a feasibility study conducted about how to get people safely up to Poplar Gate. Also, Ben, if you want to head over to Weld Hill at some point, check out the parking lot. The entire parking lot of Weld Hill is pervious pavement. So you can take your bike over there and check it out.
Thank you. These are great questions. I see a few coming up in the chat. Let's see. Is the plan for phase 3 finalized or still in design? That's a question. Maybe Danny, you could answer that.
Yep. So there is a feasibility study conducted by Niche Engineering for phase 3, but it has not advanced into design. You can find the feasibility study linked on the story map that I sent out. The Arboretum's been working with several community groups, trying to see what options will be feasible for the community. And I imagine we will advocate for the preferred option to the city.
Great. And then from Jane, she says, given that we have Arboretum staff on the line, just want to say how much the additional water fountains with the 3-way options for all possible uses, the portable toilets and the benches are deeply appreciated.
that's great to hear. And that was another collaboration between the Parks Department and the Arboretum. We put the water lines in and pay for the water, and the Parks Department put the fountains in. So that was for the first time in 150 years, there's water on Peters Hill for visitors.
Great. Thank you. It's nice getting positive feedback too. All right. Well, Kyle, maybe we could go to the last page. So we have a QR code here that just takes you to our project website. It's boston.gov/poplar-gate, but it does refer to the Oak Alley, not the gate improvement project. Let's see. Shoshana says, this area of the Arboretum is a huge part of my life, and I'm grateful to everyone who stewards it. Thank you. This is nice. Very nice. All right. Well, if there are no more questions or comments, we can close it out, but I just want to remind everyone that you feel free to send me a message anytime if you have any questions. I'll put my email address in the chat again. And you can also contact me through the webpage itself as well. But we look forward to making this project happen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.